Hello, genealogist. It's Craig with Just Genealogy. Today I want to start a new series called A Day at the Archives. Not because I'm running out of things to do, it's just something I want to do. And what we're going to deal with today is Record Group 28. And all of you should probably care about Record Group 28 because somebody in your family, whether it be a direct ancestor or a collateral, has had interaction with Record Group 28. So think for a moment how someone might have interaction with Record Group 28 and therefore try to figure out what Record Group 28 is. Well, let me solve that problem for you. Record Group 28 are the records of the Post Office Department. So what's the first thing we ever do when we look at records in the National Archives? We go to the Guide to Federal Records to get some idea about what is going on with them. We especially are interested in their administrative history. We're also interested in where the records are located, what time period they cover, and also to remind us what the record group number actually is. So in the administrative history, it gives us some idea about how long the post office has been around. There was a post office during the Second Continental Congress from 1775 to 1781. There was the Postmaster General in the Confederation Congress from 81 to 89. And then there was the Office of the Postmaster General from 1789 to 1792. And then in February, on the 20th of 1792, 1 Stat 232, we end up with this post office that we have today. There's some finding aids that are identified there, but before we get into those, I want to let you know that there is an NGS News Magazine article on the 19th century postmaster and his duties by Claire Prechtel-Clustens. And she works at the National Archives as a genealogical specialist, and she is very good at creating articles that are useful to genealogists. Because you're all members of the National Genealogical Society, you can go and look at the NGS News Magazine archives and pull this one out. So let's get into the finding aids that we've identified. And they are the preliminary inventory of the records of the Post Office Department, PI 168, and list of selected maps of states and territories, Special List 29. So unfortunately, both of these are out of print with the National Archives, but of course, Heritage Books in its infinite wisdom has them available should you wish to purchase them. So the preliminary inventory records of the Post Office Department gives you a series by series description of what is in this preliminary inventory for Record Group 28. The list is it's actually a small finding aid as finding aids go, but it deals with the issues of the Office of the Chief Clerk. It deals with postmasters, post office clerical services, city delivery service, rural delivery service, post office service, the division of dead letters, and why all those things come together. The one thing that I want to get my hands on, and I'll talk about it as soon as I can get to the National Archives, is that there is an index to the names of carriers in small city post offices 1888 to 1902. It's one volume. It's entry 89, and it looks like that might be absolutely interesting in regards to the number of names that it might have. There are also records relating to the Detroit River Steamboat Service from 1895 to 1928, 1 foot. And so there are all kinds of interesting pieces in here that actually have nothing to do with me, but they may be of interest to you, and eventually I will try to get together the pieces to be able to talk about them. Now, I was surprised that there was a list of selected maps and territories among the finding aids. And so I had to take a look at that, and I realized that what we were dealing with were maps that dealt with postal routes. So, for example, in this list, special list number 29, there is a Postroute map of the state of New Jersey for 1915. And I thought, wait a minute, I had seen Postroute Maps elsewhere, and it dawned on me that there were several entries in Record Group 28 that deal with Postroute Maps, but I couldn't find one that specifically identified what was in the list of selected maps in states and territories. I did find in the appendices of the finding aid, that being the finding aid to Record Group 28 that we just talked about, I did find a special list of Postroute Maps, which is entry 189, and then a special list, a list of manuscript Postroute Maps, which is entry 191, and there were other entries that dealt with maps, but they didn't call them out. So between these two finding aids, you should be able to get to a postal route map. And if you look on the cover of that NGS magazine that we just talked about, when you actually go get it and look at it, you'll see that there is in fact a postal route map for Virginia and West Virginia. It's Southwest Virginia actually, and Western West Virginia on the cover. So these look to be color maps in great detail. And they would have to be, because almost every crossroads in the United States has a post office, or at least wants to have a post office. There is a reference information pamphlet, number 72, that deals with the records and policies of the Post Office Department relating to place names. Because remember, post offices are established in places, and those places have to have names. And sometimes the name of the place occurs because now there's a post office there. So there's a list of things that will be avoided. Retain harmonious sounding and suitable names of Indian, Spanish, and French origin. Rarely apply names of living persons. Only those of great eminence should be so honored. Avoid long and clumsily constructed names and those of two or more words. Adopt spelling and pronunciation sanctioned by local usage. Do not restore the original form of changed or corrupted names. Use the most appropriate and euphonious, I think that means harmonious sounding, names sanctioned by local use when there is a choice of two or more names for the same place. Avoid the possessive unless its omission destroys the euphony of the name or change its descriptive application. Drop the H in Berg. Use the word center ER, not center RE, as part of the name unless local usage or legal documents require the latter. Seems to me I've seen that in New Hampshire. Do not use hyphens in connecting parts of names. Omit the letters CH, as in courthouse, appended to the names of county seats, and avoid the use of the words city and town as parts of names. So this is the guidance that we have for naming post offices, which explains why Pittsburgh no longer has an H. There is a National Archives page on post office records called Research Our Records, and I would also go through that before dealing with these post office records. The other thing I'm going to do is go to the Microfilm catalog, and it's kind of difficult to locate all of the Microfilm publications in one search that's clean when you have a 2-digit record group number. So I had to play with it a little bit. So this is a list for when you say post office. And then this is a list for when you say postmaster. And some postmaster stuff shows up that doesn't show up when you ask for post office. So going back to post office, we see that there are some things here that will be of interest to us that are either available in the catalog or available from partners. Basically, there are two microfilm publications that are going to be of most interest to us. M1131, Record of Appointment of Postmasters, 1789 to 1832. That's 4 rolls of microfilm, and it is available through the NARA catalog. Then there's M841, Records of Appointments of Postmasters, 1832 to 1971, which is 145 rolls, and it's available on Ancestry. Now, one of the things that you can download by going to that post office page at NARA is you can get post office department records with more descriptions added. And I would download this and have a look at it and see what else is there. But today I'm focusing on just a couple of pieces, not everything that's there. So I will go out to Partners, and by now you should know how to go out to Partners. And I type in Postmasters, and this is the only one that shows up, Record of Appointment of Postmasters 1832 to 1971. So that's a good thing. It says that it's on Ancestry. But it also has, at archives.gov, a description of M841. So I'd want to look at that too. And because it provides background, records description, it also provides abbreviations appearing in the record of appointments. It's a much cleaner look there than another one that I'm going to show you. So when you go to Ancestry and go to the card catalog and you type in Postmasters, this is what shows up. If you type in Post Office, it won't show up. Into the title anyway. So this is Appointment of Postmasters 1832 to 1971. So my great-great-grandfather was a postmaster in Sharon, Wisconsin. So I immediately went and plugged in his surname, which is Knilans, into the search screen, and nothing came up. Now, I knew my great-grandfather was a postmaster. So why didn't he show up? So there's always another way to do something with Ancestry. So instead of putting his name in there, which was Charles James Knilans, I put in Sharon, Walworth County, Wisconsin, which is where he was the postmaster. And when I did that, he showed up. Although not as Charles J. Knilans, he shows up as Charles J. Clinique. I have no idea why. But I'm going to view this record. And this says that he's been a postmaster since 23 June 1915. So when I go and look at Charles J. Clinique, I see right here is the second name in this list. This is Sharon. And underneath Frank's name is Charles J. Knilans. And if you blow this up, the reason it's Clinique is because the H from Morehouse got picked up by the A in Knilans. Now, admittedly, there's an E on the end instead of an S, but close enough for government work. And it gives us dates, and it gives us some abbreviations. One of them is a P, and another one is PS. So if you go back to that document that the archives has, where abbreviations are listed, that's a possibility. Or you could go to the front of this microfilm, and you will see that there's a list of abbreviations. And P stands for appointed by the president, and P and S stands for appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate. So if you look at Charles J. Knilans, he has both a PS and a P. He's got a P when he's first appointed and a PS when he's reappointed on the 5th of June of 1920. So this list of abbreviations is at the very end of the descriptive pamphlet, which you can get through the microfilm catalog, or you can get through Ancestry by going to the beginning slides of the microfilm. So what about the appointment of postmasters from 1789 to 1832, which is 4 rolls on NARA? Well, if you go back to that postmaster piece that NARA provided you with, you'll see that there is the 1789 to 1932 section, and that by clicking on each of the individual volumes, of which there are 7, and they are by year, except for the last 2, which are by year and then by beginning and end of alphabet, you can get to pretty much the right spot, but you're going to have to browse. Fortunately, my postmaster ancestor appears to be in the one that you can get to just by typing their name in, if it's spelled correctly. Another thing that you can do is look at M1126, which is one of the other microfilms identified. Before 1837, the Post Office Department had no official map maker and purchased its maps from commercial firms or private individuals. And then in 1837, they decided to appoint a topographer of the post office, and he began preparing maps for the use of postal officials. And in 1862, the Postmaster General, who was Montgomery Blair, directed the topographer to prepare comprehensive sets of postal maps for sale to the public. Maps of states or groups of states were then continually updated by the topographer's office, and this is where we get the postal route maps from. Sales of these ended in the 1950s, and evidently there was no longer a need for them to accumulate reports on post office site locations for whatever reason, I don't know. However, these post office department reports up until 1950 are available in the NAR catalog. So this is what they look like. I didn't really pay much attention to the first page. You always need to blow it up. The writing is always so small, but it's kind of neat. What I always like to look at is the map. As years went by, the topographer's requirements for these maps changed. They basically, what they cared about was county, state or territory, land description used by the federal survey system, in other words, range, township, and section, and maybe a mail route number and distance from the post office of the nearest mail route. And then they wanted to know about rivers, creeks, canals, roads, and railroads. And so most reports, but not all reports, include a diagram of what these look like. And here's another one. So these are kind of cool, especially when they identify geographic kinds of things in them. Now these are done by state and then by county, or state territory and then by county, or in the case of Louisiana, parish. There are some publications that have been done. Edith Axelton did a book on the 1789 to 1832 postmasters from Virginia. Henry F. Dill has done a couple of books on Louisiana, covering 1866 to 1931 and 1827 to 1892. Another place that you can find postmasters is in the Official Register of the United States, and you can get to that through Haiti Trust. And generally, the post office employs more people than anybody except probably the military. And so the way the Official Register worked for the longest time, it was in a single volume, then it became 2 volumes, and then eventually in the 19s, I don't know exactly which 19, volume 2 got converted to an official register of postal employees. So what you want to do is, if you've got a guy who's a postmaster, you can go and look for him in the official register. And this is it not only lists postmasters, but here's an example of mail contractors in Arkansas, Arizona to Arkansas. Here's a list of post offices and postmasters in the state of New York. And then there's something else that I thought I would track down. Because Charles Knilans was appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate, there should be in the Journal of Executive Proceedings of the Senate of the United States that happening. And you can get to those through Haiti Trust. And so here is in the Executive Journal for 1920. I think this is volume 54 or 55. I'm sorry, I've forgotten. But here he is, Charles J. Knilans, to be postmaster at Sharon, Wisconsin, in place of C.J. Knilans. That's him, because it's an incumbents commission which expired January 11th, 1920. And so this is him being presented. This is him This is him actually being nominated. And that's on a different page. And this is him actually having been confirmed as the reappointed Postmaster of Sharon, Wisconsin. Also in the Executive Journal, there's an index. So you want to make sure to go back to the index. I didn't use the index to find him, but I used the index to ensure that I had all of the pieces. As a sidelight, although it doesn't have to do with necessarily a direction of the U.S. Post Office, it has to do with Virginia. Virginia decided in 1815 that they wanted to know how far the landowners lived from the post office. Not really sure why. So when you look at these, it will give you the name of the individual. And this can be both male and female. So Ezekiel H. James, part wife's dower life, part orphans, Pocomoke, 23 miles north. Ironmonger John, Matokin, 3 miles southeast, are examples of what you're going to get. So you'll know how far somebody is from the post office. The ones I'm pulling out happen to be for Accomack County, and there is a volume for each county extant in Virginia in 1815. For me, it gives, what I can do is I can search for people who are the same distance away from the post office and in the same direction, and all of a sudden I've got some neighbors that I didn't have before, which helps me if I'm looking for land deeds and I'm having problems locating people. One last piece. Heritage Books has a book written by Tom Riley, who was with the post office forever until he retired. And it's a chronicle of the deeds performed by the men and women of the U.S. Postal Service. We actually sell a good number of these. And I'm glad for that, but I just thought I would bring it to your attention. So, this has been Craig with Just Genealogy, acquainting you with how I found my great-great-grandfather's appointment as a postmaster in Sharon, Walworth County, Wisconsin, and other things available on the records of the post office, record group 28. So here we are, Just Genealogy, ending another day, and I will see you tomorrow.